Hi everyone, it's Kelly from the Hub, here today with my father again, Roger Warner. Hi Dad.
Hi. It's me again.
It's Dad. So we talked last week. Dad was giving us how he got started in the world of wood and lathe work and all that kind of stuff. And so this is the second in our series. And when Dad and I were chatting about this, he thought, you know what? There's so many different sort of styles and ways you can do stuff that he wanted to show like a full range of stuff that he's done, sort of to give you an idea and like talk about it and give you an idea of like what all the kinds of stuff is that's out there. So it is gallery time for fun little wood things. All right, start with something sexy.
Oh no, I'm not gonna. I don't have anything sexy. I don't think. I'm gonna start with some of the most basic things you've ever seen.
Okay, basic first. Here we go.
Basic things first. So look at this. You can take a piece of a birch log with the bark still on, and all you got to do is give it a shape and drill a hole in the top and put a candle in it. Ta-da! Takes about 20 minutes to do that.
Right, because that's really natural looking, and you can see, and that's also like it's not that's also like not designed to be perfect. It's designed to be like rustic looking. Very cool. Very cool.
It's designed to be up on your mantle at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Surrounded by pine boughs.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Okay. Closely related is a category of things that I've seen a number of people call weed pots. And no, they're not a place to store your weed. Although I suppose you could if you had weed that you need to store. But this is a weed pot. And it's sort of similar to the candlesticks that you saw because it's actually around just a log, a piece of a limb or something small. And you pick out a piece that has some character to it, like with this little knot in the front, sort of.
Yeah.
And you give it a little shoulder and a little neck, and then you put a test tube inside. So they're called weed pots because people, without the test tube, of course, it'll only hold like dried flowers. So you can go out in the fall, go out in the field, and I'll show you another one while I'm talking. You can go out in the field and pick dried pieces of Queen Anne's lace or anything, thistle, all kinds of cool stuff, and make little flower arrangements and put it in these rustic little things that are called weed pots.
Right, but you could put, because you have the test tube in it, you could put live flowers in it too.
Right. So if I have a test tube that fits, I have a whole collection of old plastic test tubes and some glass ones. So if I have one that fits, I put it in there. And then, yes, you can put a rosebud or whatever, cut a couple of little flowers out of your garden.
Yeah, and you can see how those are just like a little step above the candle holders because you're doing just a little bit more.
Yeah, then you put a little neck on them and, whatever. So those are the basic kinds of, these are the kind of things that people make and sell at crafty shows.
Yeah.
All over the place. And
right, and there's not a whole lot of finish work in those necessarily because they're designed to be rustic. So you don't have to worry about, complicated staining and complicated other kinds of stuff.
Yeah, just a little bit of sanding and, that's about all.
Yeah.
So, okay, next category.
Okay.
Wood stores, which cater to sell supplies and tools and whatever for guys like me and other kind of people that do all kinds of other things, sell kits to make almost everything. And the other day last week I showed you the back scratcher that I made from a kit.
Right.
It's got a metal thing on both ends, and you just have to make the wooden part that goes in between. Well, one of the things that kits that are sold in the woodworking stores, kits to make pens, and they make two-part pens that you they all have to be made exactly the same size because there's metal fittings that go on the end where there's a clip. Then there's a metal fitting that you put inside that allows it to screw to open and close the pen. And then there's the pen and ink part and the little gold nib on the end. So I never made those, but they're very popular. They're easy to make, and they don't require much creativity. But I decided one time I would start to make pens. So I started making desk pens. So can you see that against my shirt?
Yeah.
So this is spindle work turned between centers, and you can be as fancy or as plain as you want to be out here on the end. And the trickiest part of it all is to drill a hole that stays on track, sort of on center, up through there. You turn the basic piece in between centers, and then you have to figure out a way to hold it while you drill a hole in the middle. And I just use a Bic pen insert because it's reliable. And this particular one, can you see that?
Yeah.
I decided to make this one really rustic. So this would sit on your desk.
Yeah.
It's got a knot hole in it over here. And then this little hole is where the pen goes. So.
Oh, that's very cool.
Used to be people had a pen on their desk to take notes on stuff and whatever while they're on the phone. It doesn't happen much anymore. But so for a while, I went through a while when I made a lot of these. And this is a really rustic looking one with a not so fancy pen. This is one that I like. This is actually made out of a piece of cherry, and the pen is also cherry. So this sits on your desk like this, and you see the design on the pen. I ought to have something to hold up there. I don't.
It could probably also double as a little Harry Potter wand in your
yeah, sort of. Yeah, so this has got different kinds of details on the end we can talk about later when I show you tools and stuff about how to make those kind of things.
That's cool.
And then this is a little bit fancier one, a Rosewood pen.
Ooh.
That looks very modern, sort of. I think that's a more modern design.
Yeah.
With a modern shiny holder, like so.
Yeah.
And a little thing that sits next to it to put paper clips in.
That's adorable.
So, can you see them both?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I would, at the shows that I did, I would sell these as a set. Make this and this out of the same kind of wood as the pen, and put them together and sell them as a set. So
yeah,
there you go.
I bet there's a ton of people who never knew that you could. I mean, like, I think when people think of those pens, they think you're going to sign like the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
But you can sign anything.
Right. I mean, if you can think of something round, then I can probably make it, or somebody can probably make it on the lathe.
That's very cool.
So, pens and weed pots. All right. Next category. Plates. So,
yes.
Move this out of the way a minute.
So, are we moving down the spectrum of difficulty?
Yeah, moving up the spectrum
of difficulty.
Up the spectrum of difficulty. A little more difficult.
This seems like it's a big leap.
Well, not necessarily. If you've got a decent piece of, and actually, ask me that again in a little while about the level of difficulty. A lot of people, sometimes people pick up something and they go, gee, why is this so expensive? And I say, well, that took me like 6 hours to make that, and it doesn't look like it. But if you know the process, then you'll understand that. We can talk more about it. Okay, plain plate. So this is sort of like the one I showed you the other day. Pretty plain. It's got a little bit of what we call figure, which people will call grain. But it's got a little bit of color and a little bit of, whatever stuff going on in the wood. So we start with a plain plate, like so. This is 10, 11 inches.
And
All
that's
right.
one piece of wood. That's not joined
Oh,
anywhere.
yeah.
That's a piece of wood that's that big that you made into that shape.
Yeah. And so you saw the piece of wood out of a big plank somewhere. I mean, you can't buy pieces of wood this size in the Home Depot mostly.
Right. That's you gotta find that on the side of the road.
Yeah. So this is stuff you have to have a log and a chainsaw,
Cut a
saw
tree.
it on a slab and dry it for 2 years, and then you can make this. So there's the first one. Yeah. And that's
Dry it for 2 years.
and that's the truth. It sits in my
Right.
garage for 2 or 3 years. Sometimes I've got pieces in my garage from 1985, 90, something like that, someday I'll get to those. All right, so you asked about, is that one piece of wood? Yes, the answer is yes, and that's the last one I'm going to show you that's one piece of wood. Through the miracle of wood glue, people think old-fashioned wood glue, but if I clamp this together out of, that's maple and walnut, no, that's not maple, that's pine. If I clamp this together with wood glue, I'd have to wait at least 24 hours to put it back on the lathe. Now there's people use what's technically, wow, Lucy. Technically, it's called cyanoacrylate glue and it's popularly known as crazy glue. And it comes in different thicknesses. So you can get it like as thick as water, as thick as, as thick as honey, and really thick. So for different kind of applications. So you take a piece of walnut and cut it in a couple different places, glue a piece of pine in between, put it back together, and saw it out round and put it on the lathe, and away you go. And then from that point on, you turn it just like it was one piece of wood. The difference being that with cyanoacrylate or crazy glue, I can glue it and I can glue it, and by the time I get done gluing it and walk over to the bandsaw and put it on the bandsaw, I can cut it out and take it over and put it on the lathe and turn it. In 2 minutes, it's ready to turn. It dries and bonds instantly.
So that's a way that you can sort of like up your game. So if you're, when you're looking about and when you see things that look like that, that's how those work. It was a piece of wood, and then you wanted to put those cool strips in there. You did it in the raw phase,
right?
And then you created what it looked like, and then you made the finished piece afterward. Because I think that sometimes the order can be complicated for people. Like, when do you put that part in?
Yeah, and with plates are different than bowls, the way I do it at least. So I usually do, this is called laying up something. It means kind of gluing pieces together. So when I do pieces with layup, on plates, I do them square and glue them together, and then saw it out round on the bandsaw and put it on the lathe and turn it like one piece of wood. When we get to bowls, talking about bowls, I do it differently there. So I'll explain to you then.
Cool.
So this is a dark piece of wood with light colored layup, light colored inlay.
Yep.
And it's technically not inlay, because
inlay means it's going to fit in. It's going to rest inside of it, like you notch your glue.
Technically, inlay, you make a channel and you put it in there, and it's only on the surface.
Right. This goes all the way through.
This goes all the way through.
Yeah, that's okay. Right.
So that's why, I call it layup technically. So that's a dark piece of wood with a light colored layup, and here's a light colored piece of wood with a dark colored layup. This is an oak plate with more pine strips, and this in the middle is this purple stuff. It's an exotic wood from the jungle somewhere called Purple Heart. Oh, and I know what I was going to say to you before. What this also does is allow you to take small pieces of wood and put it together and make a big plate. Oh,
Oh, okay. So that
because
you can get, right, because it's weird because all I want to do is touch it. The small piece that's on top that's oak might not come from the same piece as the rest of the oak plate, right?
you got it. So if I have a 6-inch board that's, whatever, 5 feet long, but it's only 6 inches wide, I can take 2 of those 6-inch pieces, cut them a foot long, sandwich something in between that looks decorative, glue them together, and all of a sudden I can make a 12-inch plate out of a 6-inch board. Magic, like Harry Potter
Yeah,
taps it with it.
there we go.
So that allows you to take small pieces of wood and make bigger pieces on the lathe by gluing them together.
Okay, that's cool.
All right, so those 2 pieces that I just showed you were sawed pieces that were sandwiched in, and this piece is another oak plate, but these are what woodworkers call plugs. And I don't know, at one point, somewhere along the way, we can talk about design, or we can just sandwich it in with, while I'm talking about other stuff. But somewhere along the way, this concept just kind of hit me. And I don't know why. I don't know if I ever saw somebody else make something like this or not. Maybe it's possible. But
In those pieces that you have that are like that, I always think that it looks like it's like planets.
I called this the Planetary Plate.
Oh, okay, that's fantastic.
Great minds think alike. Yeah. So
Yeah, I love that because it does, and what's cool is that you can make it so intricate, but you can also make it super simple. So how do you put do the holes go all the way through, the plugs go all the way through, or are they inlaid?
the holes go all the way through.
Aha.
Now you can make, some people make them where the holes don't go all the way through. It takes a special bit that doesn't have a point on it, a sharp point, because
You could use a router to do that.
it'll drill a flat bottom hole. Yeah, but you can't use a router and make it perfectly round like you can with a bit.
Oh, okay. So for those of you who were wondering what I was just talking about, routering is the thing that you use to take, if you have a sharp edge and you wanted to make it curved, you use a router to take that curved side. I learned a couple of tools. That's one of the tools. That's about all I know.
That's one of the several things that a router will do, yeah.
Yeah.
So it also, in order to do that, so you see how thick this plate is.
Yeah.
It's pretty thin.
Yeah.
It's pretty thin. It's 1/8 of an inch thick up here at the edge. So if you wanted to make these on the front but not go through the back, you'd have to be absolutely precise about where you stop drilling the hole, and when you turn the plate, about where you stop with the turning tool.
Right, because so you could easily crack or go right through that.
Yeah, exactly. Then it would be, depending on where you stopped, it could be ugly because it could show the raggedy bottom of the hole. But anyhow, so I would probably take this plate, take the oak plank, saw it out round on the bandsaw, get different sizes of drill bits and drill the holes. And then I would make these plugs, custom make each one to fit the hole. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
glue them in?
Just glue them in one at a time. So you have to make the plug has to fit the hole really closely, really tight, so it doesn't show a lot of glue around the edge. And then you put them in put them one in, glue it in, and then drill out the hole for the next one. And put it in, and then drill out the hole for the next one, because you see some of the plugs overlap each other.
Right. But because you're using crazy glue, it'll harden enough that you can drill it even after you just did the one next to it.
Yeah, in less than a minute.
Yeah.
So, and each one of these is different, and so these are drilled, these plugs, this one And this one and this one are all made out of a little limb. So that's looking at the round part you see in there is the center of the tree. And these other ones are made out of boards. These three
Oh,
are
okay.
made out of a little board that you just drill, make a round piece to fit. So plugs. And then there's a tool that I can show you when we get there, talking about tools that I use to make these little channels that go around the edge that are for no other reason except decoration, to draw your eye out to the edge.
So people who look at that think that you could use like a Dremel.
A Dremel?
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like something like that. Like it's really fast and you could just go,
Yeah,
but probably way cooler than.
But you'd have a hard time. Actually, that's way too complicated. The way I do it is way easier. But I'll show you that later.
Cool.
Okay. Next one. All right. So you got a bunch of small pieces of wood,
Okay.
but you want to make a big plate, like I told you about.
Right.
Well, so what do?
You glue them together.
You take the small pieces of wood, glue them together, and separate them by a piece of wood, a thin piece of wood that's a different color, and glue them all together, and then make your plate from there. So this is
That
one
looks
of the
like that looks like you made bricks
yeah,
out of wood.
right. That's the idea. And they sort of started out sort of like bricks. They were little. They have to be a couple inches thick, so you got enough thickness to work with. And all of these pieces of wood, I think, are all from the same tree. Now, the weird thing is that, and I don't know how much I should go into detail about the stuff, but these lines, these lines are made when a fungus gets into the end of the log and follows the grain. You know that a piece of wood is like a bunch of straws held together in a bundle, and what you see is called the grain, and the fungus gets in there and it follows the grain. So those are fungus marks. All of these marks that you see, no matter whether they're sharp and well defined or kind of blurry and weird like some of these things, those are all from a fungus that gets into the log as it starts to rot. And the key for a woodworker is to find a log that's just at the right stage of being decomposed. So when it's just at the right stage of decomposition, you get this kind of stuff. If I took this log and left it somewhere for another year or so, it might be so soft and half turning to sawdust that I couldn't make anything out of it. Because this is a decomposition process. Once I cut it and make something out of it and seal it up with finish, it won't advance and decompose anymore. And then I'm going to hold this up and then I don't know what this is. So I'm going to admit to my ignorance, because remember, like I told you, I'm a self-taught guy, so there's a whole lot of stuff that I don't know. I just kind of make it up as I go along. I don't know why parts of this tree turn so dark nut brown like this. But you see, those pieces have the same fungus lines in them, but they're much darker color. And here's a piece down on the very, very bottom.
Yeah.
That's dark, but it's got a little bit of light on the edge, right there.
So we're gonna make the plug that if you're a wood guy out there and you know why that is, put a little note in the comments. It's always good to learn science.
Call in and let us know.
Yeah.
We're here 24 hours a day at 3 a.m.
I am pretty much here 24 hours a day.
Okay. And then one other thing that you should see about this, you'll have to tell me, Kelly, how good you can see it. This is called Wormy Maple.
Yeah, you can see them. Those little holes. So worms make those?
Well, I'm not sure. There's several different things that can infect a decomposing tree. Ants is one. Ants leave trails like that. I think these are worms, little worms. They're the larvae of some butterfly or whatever, and they get in and infect the tree. There's a bigger one right up here.
Yeah.
You see that? A bigger one right there, and a bigger one over here.
Yeah.
Those go all through. So, wormy maple, all made out of little pieces that I sawed into slabs, glued them together, and then made a plate. Once you get it glued together, everything else you deal with it as if it's one piece of wood.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So there's nothing.
Because you're actually creating the one piece of wood.
You're creating one piece of wood. All right. Last plate.
Good.
And I can tell I can have time to get through all the pieces I got to show you, but anyhow.
What the hell is this?
Last plate. Okay, imagine. This is technology at work, and I did see somebody else who specialized, saw a video somewhere, somebody else who specializes in doing this, using this process. So what you do is you take some big chunks of wood and you make a mold. Think of a springform pan.
Okay.
Okay, so you make that, you clamp a bunch of pieces of wood together, and you make something that is round in the middle, has a round hole in the middle like a springform pan.
Yep.
You have to have a bottom.
Right.
You take little sticks of wood, little limbs, little anything that you like the looks of, the color of, the pattern that's hidden inside, or whatever. Most of those things that would start out, I was going to show you, it doesn't work. Anyhow, starts out as a limb, and you turn it out round to make like a dowel.
Yeah.
A dowel. Could be a big dowel like this, it could be a little dinky dowel. You take all those dowels, all different colors and different species of wood, and you stack them up in the springform pan mold that you made. Then you mix up a batch of clear epoxy. Some people call it bar top resin. I'll bet you've gone into a bar that had a wooden bar that was like shiny, and it looked like, whoa, it looked like there was glass over the top, but it wasn't.
Right.
That's epoxy. And you pour epoxy into the mold on top of all the pieces.
Oh.
And that's what you get.
That sets up to look like a big, thick thing, and then you can cut it like it's one piece of wood.
Exactly. Exactly. And I forgot to get myself prepared here. I have to step away just a second. It'll just take me a second.
So you can see he's got a lot of things here, and we're going to probably do plates, and then we're going to have to do the gallery part 2 next time.
Have to do the gallery part 2.
Okay, so here's my question. Those are all round little things, and then the epoxy fills it in so it's clear in between. Well, I guess if you use clear epoxy, it would be clear in between it. You could literally see daylight through it, through the little hole spaces.
The girl is reading my mind. We never even talked about this. Flashlight.
Look at this. There's a lot of wow that's going to come out right now. That's so cool. So you could actually hang that like in front of a window and sunlight could come through.
One would think that you had been in my living room and seen this sitting up on the windowsill right in front of the window where the light shines right through it 24 hours a day.
Don't tell people that.
12 hours a day. So
that's
you can see
cool.
If it's not too shiny and reflective, you can see there's a great big piece in here.
Yeah.
This fungus in it. Yep. I forgot to tell you. This piece, remember?
Yeah.
The black lines in there.
Yeah.
That's called spalting. Spalt. S-P-A-L-T.
Spalted.
So here's a spalted piece of something. And then there's plywood. That's plywood.
Huh. And then there's those little stripy pieces, so you made little other pieces.
These are dowels, little tiny dowels to fill up the gaps. Pine, mulberry, mahogany, rosewood, maple. I don't even know some of these pieces. I just saved them all.
But you
in-
can literally use scraps of a gajillion things
Yeah.
and make something beautiful out of it.
Right, there's more than 20 different species of wood in here. And that doesn't include the pieces like this that I sandwich these together.
Right.
In order to make those dowels. I sandwiched those together out of different stuff that I had scraps left over. So, epitome of the coolest plate.
And I think if someone, like, and you're right, if someone doesn't know and they look at that, they think, huh, I bet, like you can't even process how you could make that because you just have no idea.
Right. So, okay. Let me show you one other thing, and then maybe we'll have to do a part 2.
Yeah, the gallery
Yeah,
part 2.
Because it takes a while to explain if you want people to understand
Right.
how it's done. All right, I like miniatures, and I've made a lot of miniatures. So let's look at a couple miniatures. So I don't know. Can you see that?
Yeah.
In my screen, it's a little weird.
Yeah, I can see it.
So this has a natural edge. So you see it's not round on the edge. That's where the bark used to be.
Yep.
This is made across just a chunk of a limb. And you can see how big it is. There's nothing it's not uniquely weird or whatever.
It's
but
just little.
For me, anything that's like 2 inches or so is a miniature. All right, so there's that. Then you can make something with a rim that's really weird on one side. It's eccentric. It's totally eccentric.
Right.
So I took a piece of a limb, and instead of mounting it in the center, I mounted it off to the side. So I've got my little bowl underneath there with a rim that looks like a wing, and it's got ant holes.
And we were sort of talking about, like, you did that because that's what the wood was sort of showing you that it could do.
Yeah, because you look at this has bark all the way around the edge.
Right.
So you can see the limb wasn't round.
Right.
So, if some people would say, oh, don't give me that crap about how the wood tells you what to do. Well, right. It didn't tell me what to do, but it made a suggestion.
Right. And I think what's fascinating about this is that, so like in the other plate with all of the circles, you manufactured that.
Right.
Wood didn't tell you squat. You decided how to create it.
Right.
And so you can do all of the above with this, because this piece, right, it showed you, I've got this cool edge right here, so maybe you want to show me off. Right. So I think you can do all of the things.
Yeah. And so that if you got a little tiny piece of wood, you can do 2 things with it. You can make a little tiny piece. Well, you can do 3 things with it. You can make a little tiny piece like this, pretty small, only 2 inches, and the little ball is only 1 inch. And you see the wormholes, right, or the ant holes?
Yeah.
It's got some in the bottom, and it's got some in the... So you can make a little tiny piece. You can glue a bunch of little tiny pieces together to make a big piece.
Right.
Make something out of that. Or you can say, oh, never mind, it's too small, I'm going to throw it away.
Right, you could just put it in the burn pile. Right.
Okay, next piece. Now, this goes back to what you were saying before. Name this piece, Kelly. Come on. This is a Saturn bowl. Yeah. This is a Saturn bowl. Yep. And again, the shape of the limb, which was eccentric,
right,
not anywhere near close to round, suggested to me that I could make something with an eccentric rim. So there it is. It's a little hole in the it's hard to hollow, difficult to hollow. This is an example of how this piece could cost as much, I would charge as much as a piece that was 5 times as big. because it takes just as much time to hollow this little sucker out. It's pretty cool, pretty thin.
Yeah.
You put my finger way down in there, you know, it's pretty thin and hollow all the way through. So it took a lot of time to do that, even though it's little. All right. So those are kind of all sort of a different, that form, different form. So
I love the little tiny pieces. They're like my favorite.
yeah, this is the design that people call a doorknob base, because look what the shape of it is.
Right. It looks just like a doorknob. Yeah.
Shape of a doorknob. So this is just a small piece of walnut on the bottom. It's got a piece of rosewood or purple heart or something in the middle. And then there's a weird thing that you're not going to hardly believe. There's a nut called tauga, T-A-U-G-A, that's known by woodworkers as vegetable ivory. Sort of looks like ivory. It's a little dark now, but you see it has a like almost like bark around the edge. That's the edge of the nut. This nut looks sort of like a Brazil nut, you know, those great big, but it's way, they're bigger than a walnut, but they're not very big. And you can use them when you're making miniatures to make a rim that looks like ivory almost. Although this has gotten considerably darker over the years. So there's that. And I've made those in several different forms. This one, I made it specifically to show the wormholes. And I set it up. Can you see them?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you can see.
Yeah.
Bark edge, natural bark, and that's a piece of cherry. And this one, a stain in the wood.
Yeah.
This is another piece of cherry that's lighter, but it's got this light colored stain. Usually the wood is real light colored under the bark and dark inside. That's what that is. All right, so there's that. Okay, this one's a little bit bigger. And I'm showing you this one for a particular reason. Because this is a piece of cherry as well. I like to make stuff out of cherry, as you can tell. I have a lot of cherry pieces. This is cherry as well. And the white thing is PVC. It's a ring from a piece of PVC pipe that your plumber would use to run the water line somewhere, except this is a little bigger, about 2 inches.
You can take stuff that has pretty much zero artistic quality in the universe and turn it into awesomeness.
Yeah, and I use it for contrast, because one thing you'll see about a lot of my pieces is that there's a lot of contrast to them, either contrasting colors between the woods, like the plates I showed you before, or contrast between really smooth, shiny, beautiful surfaces and ugly bark, raggedy, dark, rotten, mountainous, whatever.
Right.
Pieces of wood. But the other unique, so then there's a piece of PVC and a piece of probably walnut or something in there. I'm not sure what that is. But then the top, I wanted you to see the top of this.
Okay, it's funny because I've do 2 million of these interviews, and every time I get so excited, I lean into the camera because I feel like I can see it closer.
I'm holding it up to the camera. I don't know how good you can see it.
I can see interesting, funky edge.
Yep, it's a piece of moose antler. I took a big palmate. You know, mooses have mises have palmate antlers. They're big and flat, like your hand.
Yeah.
And I cut a round piece out and glued it to the top and treated it like a piece of wood. And there we go. And I saw that, I bought the moose antler up in Maine, actually. And I did that because I saw somebody actually using moose antler for a rim. And so I said, I can do that. So I did. All right. 3 more.
Okay.
This is one of your favorites. Another piece of cherry.
Yep.
You see it?
Yep.
Another piece of cherry, but it's dark. Cherry is photoactive. So if you make a ball out of cherry, and it can be light pink and or brown or whatever, and you set it up on the shelf and took a picture of it, and a year later go back and take another picture, it's going to be way darker because the light makes cherry turn dark. So this is a tiny little cherry ball that has a piece of rosewood and 2 pieces of maple veneer sandwiched in. And I did it the same way I did those plates. I took a chunk of cherry, sawed it, put in the cherry veneer, the maple veneer and the exotic, and then sawed it out round and put it on the lathe and treated it like one piece of wood.
Right.
So you can see that in the inside. And the reason I put it off center like that is I wanted you to be able to see it on the outside and the inside, but I didn't want it to go right down the middle.
Right, right.
If you want to see it on the inside, you got to work for it. You got to
right.
look in there a little deeper. Right. I'm going to just hold this one.
I love the little minis there. I mean, that can't be cuter. There we go.
Now you can see it better. And thank God for Jane still sticking with me after all these years. When we go somewhere, I'm always on the lookout for pieces of wood. I picked up pieces of wood in Grand Canyon. Oh, no, I didn't. Some other park where it's not illegal to take wood. I picked up pieces of wood along the road in Redwood, in the Redwoods area up in Northern California, Southern Oregon.
Yep.
I picked up pieces of wood on the beach in Georgia, and that's where this came from. It was some weird.
Right. So like other people get other kinds of souvenirs. You just take pieces of wood off the side of the road.
I come home from the beach with a bag of sand-covered wood.
Yep, it's a miracle Jane has stayed this long.
Yep, there was these weird little limbs there, and they had these knots on them, these knobby things on them, which people call burls when they come on trees. I had no idea what kind of wood this is, but it's a burl, and that's the natural edge of the piece, and it's got color.
Yeah,
you see the variation in the dark and
it's
light.
very textury.
Yeah, textury. So there you go. So you probably think that's the smallest piece I ever made.
It isn't.
No.
I've seen the smallest piece you ever made.
And I don't know if I ever saw anybody make one quite this small, but this is for people who are trying to quit drinking. So they want to cut down on their drinking, so they use this for a wine glass.
So it's a wine glass, and you can see it's mounted on a little piece of wood.
It's a wine glass mounted on. I'll take it off.
Right, because you could, it's easy to lose.
Yeah. So there it is. And this was an exercise for me in seeing how small I could make something. And it's pretty small.
Right. It's like, when you have, so like if you're a veterinarian and you're used to like doing surgeries on cows and horses and stuff, then you have one set of tools. But if you have to do surgery on like moths or whatever, you need a whole other set of tools. So it's not like you can take the tools that you normally have and just go, oh, and I can also make a little mini wood chalice.
Right. And I have a set of small tools. And even the small tools that I had were not quite small enough to do some of the little details on here. So I took a nail and I pounded it into a dowel. And then I cut the head off and sharpened it to make a little tiny chisel that would cut out those little beads on there. So
right, and so like
there you go.
And so like that's one of those, and that's really cool because it's not, you made it for a lot of reasons, but you made it for also to see if you could make it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We have time for one more small category?
No, we don't.
Okay. Then never mind.
So,
I'll just
so for those of you who are watching, you should understand this is my whole life, and we love that part and we think it's wonderful, but we will do a gallery part 2 so that you can show all the rest of the stuff. And then just so you guys know, we've got a whole series of stuff that he's going to talk about different other things and how you can do stuff. And he's going to show you the lathe and show you some of the tools and all that stuff. But he wanted to make sure that you saw all these parts so that as we're talking about them, you've got vocabulary, you've got like shape, you've got design, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, because if I went down and showed you the tools and said, this is a tool for doing this, you wouldn't know what this was, what I'm talking about.
Right.
So if you see some of the finished pieces and see what they look like, then that gives you a point of reference that you can understand other stuff. So we can do some how-to stuff. We can do, these are the tools and this is the equipment and whatever. And
also for those of you who are excited about like finishing, like you think to yourself, so I put it on the lathe, now what the hell do I do? We'll talk about sanding, and I would just say the word varnish, and I know that that's not even the word we use. So all those other kinds of finish words that we've got oodles of stuff. So.
And I know that during the pandemic, this may or may not be a great time to talk about this, but if you've got a good wood working store near you somewhere, you can buy a lathe that's only about this big. It's only about 2 feet long. Bolt it to the top of your workbench, and make stuff like this real easy. And they're not that expensive. You know, you can buy a small set of tools. You can make some of your own tools, whatever. So if you're anybody who's interested in doing some of this kind of stuff yourself, the equipment can be expensive and whatever, but it doesn't
like lots of things. You can do stuff.
Doesn't have to.
Right. You can do stuff cheaper to start, and then as you are progressing, you can get more things as you are getting better with it. Yeah.
Right. And send me your address and I'll send you a box of scrap wood that you can make all kinds of stuff out of.
And he's serious about this because remember, there's wood everywhere. Yeah.
Wood everywhere.
Thank you, everybody. We will see you again next week as we talk about more fun things to do with wood with my dad. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for watching.